Hello everybody, welcome to Frame Trap. Today I am joined by Ian Hink.
Hi.
And Mr. Daniel Bloodworth.
Hello.
Ian, there was such a delay in your reaction, and I was like, oh no, did I lose sound? Because I didn't have the camera pulled up.
What happened was I was going to just wave, and then I was like, oh wait, listeners. And then I was like, I should say hello. And then I did.
Say hello. So it is not my birthday today. It was my birthday 2 days ago. But it got me thinking, like, what was the best birthday you had as a kid? Like, did you guys have any sweet parties or gifts or memories or anything like that?
I definitely remember being really psyched about getting Final Fantasy 3 6, you know. I've got that photo, so I think it's like any things that you have photos of stick in your head a lot easier.
Sure. That's pretty cool though. Was it one of those things? Because I definitely had some like games that I wanted as a kid where it was like I would ask my parents for months and then like get it at the end of the year, and just that build up made it so exciting and awesome.
Yeah, and I think the Super Nintendo, I probably, like a couple of years before that was pretty cool too, even though I'd like rented it a billion times before then.
Yeah. Man, renting the PS1, it was sweet.
Those are the days.
Yeah. I for one of my birthdays, we like got a bunch of this. I think I was probably in like 4th or 5th grade when this happened. We went to see Phantom Menace. And, not a great movie, but when you're a kid, amazing.
Yeah.
And just the juxtaposition of that when you were in 4th or 5th grade.
Yeah. I think I was in 4th or 5th grade when Phantom Menace came out. If memory serves, for sure.
I was an adult living in Texas.
Yeah. What year did that?
You were on your
come
second
out?
life. I think it was 1999.
Yeah, it was 99 for sure. I had a friend. It was crazy because like we were all living there with like no money, right? We're just like supported by like friends and family and parents, and one of my friends like went to see that movie in the theaters. I think like 12 times.
Oh wow!
Like otherwise our entertainment was going to Walmart because that was it. That was what there was.
I think the most I've seen a movie in the theater is 3 times. I think that's the top I've done.
I think we went to see She's All That like 13 times in theaters because similar to Bloodworth, I grew up in a small town where like going to Walmart, driving around, like running around in the woods, biking, like if it was cold out, you didn't have half of those options.
Yeah, that definitely happened when I was in high school. A buddy of mine and I would go to movies like cheap matinees. Ended up seeing a lot of garbage. Definitely did not stay for all the bad movies all the time, but it was fun. Any birthday memories, Ian?
Some friends threw a surprise party for me in college that was pretty great.
Oh, that's awesome.
And occasionally it would line up that we would be at Disney World like around our birthday. My sister and my birthdays are like 5 days apart. 4 days apart, 5 years apart.
I see. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So we would do like joint stuff a lot. But yeah, those are all really good times.
Yeah. Man, like when Nintendo World opens up here in LA, I want us all to go. I don't know when that's going to be, I guess. But because
I just realized that I had a dream. It must have been a couple of nights ago. Yeah. I had a dream because I remember the end of the dream. I forgot my mask, so I had to go back to get my mask. But at some other point in the dream, I was up on a ridge and I could see into the valley and I could see Nintendo stuff at Universal in my dream. And I just realized that wasn't real. Because I'm like, wait, I haven't been outside. Yeah. Weird. Anyway,
every time I go outside, which is not that often, to like take a walk or something, I always like, oh, the fresh air is so sweet. Like I really should make a point of doing it every day because you need it, man. Your body needs it.
Yeah, with the curfew the past week, we haven't been out too much until last night, so it was nice.
Ian, there's a game, well, really, like, many games that you've been excited for. Some ancient games, some games as old as time.
Yeah.
And those are the Clubhouse games. Tell me about it.
Clubhouse Games, 51 games from around the world came out on Switch. I was like weirdly excited for this. And maybe we'll find something to do with it in a video. But yeah, I powered it up last night, and I had the first thing I jumped into Mancala, which was a favorite game of mine and my sister's when we were kids. We would just sit there playing Mancala a lot, which has African and Asian origins, but is played everywhere. You've got stones and you move them around. And I destroyed the computer. Felt great because I was playing alone, so I was playing against AI. And even on quote unquote, yeah, it's got AI for almost every game, maybe every game.
Do they have like other like side objectives and stuff like that to kind of keep you playing certain games?
You unlock trivia about the game, like world history stuff, and yeah, I think that's kind of it. I haven't had a chance to play it online or multiplayer yet, and I'm a little disappointed. I thought it had, and maybe it does in multiplayer mode. I thought it had just regular Go on it, but apparently so far I've just seen Gomoku, which is like the Othello kind of like 5 in a row version. Which, because turns out I'm not very good at that. I'm on amazing difficulty now, and the computer beats me on that one. And I'm discovering new games that I'd never heard of, like the Hound and the Hare or something like that.
The Hound and the Hare.
Yeah, it's a French game. French military used to play it, I guess. You have a hare and 3 hounds. The hounds can only move forward. The hare can go wherever it wants, and the hare just has to get past the hounds. And there were definitely some times where I was playing it and I was like, how is this even fair? Like, it's not possible to win. And then I figured out some like strategies, and then it got better. But yeah, there's all kinds of crazy stuff on this thing. It's got, chess and Gomoku and a couple of versions of it's got solitaire mahjong, they'll like just take the pairs away. It's got starts with an R, a different kind of mahjong, which I assume is not like full-blown ass mahjong.
Do you understand full-blown ass mahjong?
I intend to learn the version on this.
Okay.
Because it says like high learning curve, but it really is worth it, like in the thing. The presentation of this game is really kind of cute. You make a little figure, like a board game figure that represents yourself. If you're online, your friends can see you where you are on the globe. Everything is like toys, so it's like a globe. The globe map is like a literal like globe. It has like the seam around the equator where the two halves. And the people who talk to you about tell you the rules and stuff, they're little figurines and stuff. And the writing is kind of cute. Like, the whole thing is quaint. They have voiceover, which I was surprised by. They'll be like, well, here's how you play this. And then these 2 little kids will show up and be like, we already know how to play this. And then they explain it to the older guy. And he's like, well, I guess you don't need me at all. Stuff like that. It's cute. And then there are games included that I didn't realize would be included. Stuff like tanks and billiards and like toy boxing and stuff. So more like mini game stuff. There's a
Fireball Island.
What's that?
It was an 80s thing with this like volcano, and like you had these red marbles that would like roll down sometimes and like knock your figures down the slopes. That
sounds fun.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything like that.
Probably not. It was probably like Milton Bradley thing.
Yeah, they've got versions of like stuff that I knew as having a brand name, like Mastermind, is on there under a different name, which I guess means that it was an older concept, which makes sense. But yeah, 51 games. Some of them are like mini games. Some of them are classic games.
They even have just a keyboard on there if you want to jam.
Yeah,
out.
And I was messing around with that a little bit last night, the piano. if you have multiple switches and you take the Joy-Cons off, you can do 4 of them, I think. You can lay them out next to each other with the systems and make a longer piano with a longer 4 octaves or whatever range. But if you arrange them like 1, 2, 3, 4 in like a grid, not a line, it becomes an electric like organ synth.
Whoa.
Just kind of funny, like a lot of little weird details that you wouldn't expect this game to have.
I want a full concert with 4 switches.
Yeah, 4 switches.
You need 4 switches, and the little figures are like, well, what are we going to do with these things? And it's got the Joy-Cons, and each one is, if you press a different button on a different Joy-Con, it does a different instrument. So there's like a maraca and a drum and whatever.
Wii Music lives.
Wii Music lives. I did not anticipate that would be part of Clubhouse Games 51, whatever the hell the full name is. But yeah, it's cute. It's a little more. It has a feeling more like those older mini game, like Wii mini game compilations.
Something like Wii Play or
like Wii Play or like I imagine the tank game might even be the same as the Wii Play tank game, and like, or an ancestor of it, which I don't know why I didn't expect this, but I didn't expect it to have that kind of like cheapo Wii mini game kind of vibe to it, which it sort of does. It's like it's an evolution of that, basically, with way more games, but everything is rock solid. Nothing feels cheap or like just kind of thrown together so far. At least to my estimation. I didn't really have high hopes. $40 might be $10 too high, but
yeah. So that's actually something I want to talk to you about. I have a funny story regarding Clubhouse Games.
Yeah.
We can share this now.
Yeah, we guess we can.
I was doing the Xenoblade review, and I was
wanted to.
I wanted to do the Xenoblade review. I was very excited about this game. It's a game I love quite a bit. Talked about it last Frame Trap. Anyway, Blood sends me on Slack like, oh, we got the code. And I'm very excited. I check my email, plug in the code. They didn't send us Xenoblade. They sent us Clubhouse Games. And it was just a mistake.
Way early,
way early. Yeah. Just a mistake, not intentional by any means, but just, it was something we all kind of had a good laugh at. And so I had Clubhouse Games unexpectedly.
Yeah, you redeemed it.
Yeah. Well, I
and
redeemed
then
it.
We had to tell them, and then we had to agree to a new embargo for a game we already had.
Well, I told Blood, I was like, maybe I'll redeem it just in case it's Xenoblade, and no, like it was Clubhouse Games, for sure. So I had Clubhouse Games unexpectedly, and I checked it out, and I played like a game of checkers with my wife, and I kind of had this moment. Well, now I kind of have this moment, I guess, in retrospect, thinking about it, where I feel just like so spoiled. Like as a kid, I could play checkers no problem, but after playing like one game of checkers with my wife, it was like, why don't we go do something else? Like, we have like so many things that we could do now. We've got, or like even just watching stuff, right? You can put on Netflix and you have all these things that I was like, I don't know if Clubhouse Games would be able to keep my attention. And I'm just curious, Ian, as somebody who's like actually excited about it, was actually looking forward to it. Did you sort of run into that situation at all?
It definitely, like, for me, it fills a very specific niche, because it's like in those moments where you find yourself in an airport next to a charger, with your sister or whatever, you might as well play, on your Switch. Or like I had a half hour to kill before we started shooting, so I played a game of Spider Solitaire,
Right.
Just little stuff like that. Like
sure.
You're in bed, you want to wind down. I think this game is nice for that.
Yeah, situations when you don't want to get too invested in something, right?
Right.
And
just
like
a little pick up and play.
Mobile phone games are theoretically good for that, but now they're just like full of like weirdness and ads and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, and I find that more and more, like, what I want is to be able to literally just jump in. Like, I want the barrier to entry to be almost nothing. Like, I want to turn on the thing and be playing the game in 20 seconds, you know?
Right.
And phone games now, like, you know, there's like a 30-minute preamble every time you try to start a new phone game to like learn all the whatever, even if it is a game that's like Bejeweled or whatever.
Right. Like, there's such a process to it where, especially if you haven't been keeping up with the game for a while, like you probably have to download an update. So you got to go through that. Then you got to go, and then it's like, here's all your daily rewards. And so you got to go through those screens. And then it's like, okay, here's your missions. You're right. There's a huge preamble. There's so many steps. And they all kind of follow a very similar format.
And what's nice about this game is that there are 51 on there. You know, 10 or 15 of them are like silly little mini games, like whatever. You can just figure that out. 10 or so are probably games that you already know. 5 or 6 maybe you know pretty well, like and then there are the rest, like 10, 15, 20 games that you've heard of but you never really dove into. Like, I've played backgammon like, I don't know, 2 or 3 times in my life, but I don't remember it at all.
Right.
And now I can just play it if I want to and like learn it, or mahjong or reiki or whatever it's called. Is that what it's called? Whatever.
That's actually funny, and something that I kind of ran into when I booted up Clubhouse Games. And I run into this with, like, when I go home and we play games as a family, that moment where it's like, oh, we've all forgotten the rules. Okay, which game do we remember how to play so we can just quickly jump in? And that definitely happened with Clubhouse Games. They do, I mean, obviously you can read about the rules. It's not like they leave you hanging, but...
Shogi is the game I was thinking of, not Reiki. Reiki's like the touch healing or something. Yeah, it's like very different or similar. I haven't played Shogi. Who knows?
Yeah, Shogi is a little like kind of house shaped.
Yeah, it's like a
tiles.
war game, right? So I don't know, territory control. But chess and everything. It's cute. It's fun. When it inevitably goes on sale, it'll definitely be worth picking up if you're into traditional games like this.
Yeah, man, $40. I feel like that's like you mentioned $10 off. I feel like it's maybe twice as expensive as it probably should be.
And I mean, maybe part of what you're paying for is that like it runs well, it's solid. The online, I haven't tried the online yet, but online functionality theoretically hopefully is good and works well and stuff. So maybe those are factors.
A friend pass kind of thing too for it to.
There is.
Like you 4 or 5 games.
Yeah, I haven't tried it, but yeah, if you're playing local with 2 systems, you can click, and it says guest pass, so it lets the other person use a Switch that doesn't have the game, I imagine.
You mentioned it running well, and there's something like hilarious. Like Checkers has a bad frame rate. That just really funny.
Well, and the presentation is good, and the controls are generally good. I need to check if you can. Like, I really noticed it playing Spider Solitaire. Like, I want to speed up the acceleration on the cursor maybe a little bit, if that's possible. Hopefully, it is. But you can do everything with a lot of the games with touchscreen too, which I accidentally I was trying to brush a piece of lint off the screen and lost a game of Gamoku by putting a piece like way over on the side. But yeah, I don't know. I talked about a silly board game thing for a while, I feel like, but it's good. It's cute.
Yeah.
Ben, it's funny that you mentioned that though, because back at Game Trailers, when I first started and they made me review Pocket Pool, that was one of the most hilarious parts about it. It was like, not just is it this stupid premise of like unlocking
was that
photos.
On PSP?
Yeah. Stupid premise of like unlocking like sexy photos and videos by playing games of pool. But the games of pool were also just terrible. Like, you could get like a Flash game that was a better game of pool than this stupid PSP game.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I feel like I really dodged a bullet, because when I was an intern at Game Trailers, I remember having to capture like Wii shovelware from time to time, but that wasn't at a point where I was really reviewing stuff for you guys. And I imagine like that period of reviewing games could probably be soul crushing depending on what you were assigned, where you're just like sitting there at your capture station flailing this thing around and it's just not working. Or like Connect games. Like I missed having to review any of that stuff too.
Oh, so. Wait, we forgot to tell the end of the accidental code redemption story.
There's an end?
Yeah, there's a half of it you don't know about.
Okay.
I have a planned to do an episode of a certain show with Clubhouse Games, and so I was like, okay, I just checked with Bloodworth. I'm like, can we get a code, like an on purpose code? But they ran out of codes, so they couldn't give us another code, so I had to buy it, which is just really funny because Ben's got our code.
And like,
so I'll just put you on that episode, Ben, because you already got it.
Sure, yeah. And I wasn't like trying to take the code from you.
No.
It's just so really funny and sad. And Brandon, I think, said it best. He was like, "There's no like the funniest game it could possibly be for them to send us by mistake is Clubhouse Games."
Like the only thing that would have been like crazier is if like you put it in and it said like Paper Mario. And you're like, before it was announced.
Oh, yeah, that would be nuts.
Like, what?
Or if, it's like almost the most opposite game of Xenoblade. Right. I guess it could, maybe, would this have been worse if it had been Xenoblade, but not Definitive Edition, just the old one? Like a code
just
for that
old
somehow?
Xenoblade.
That would be amazing. That would be so impossible, but it would be
amazing.
Yeah,
it's just like, how did you even, what? Like, why did this
Or
happen?
if it was like Xenoblade 2 or something.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah.
That would be funny.
Just a Wii U code.
Yeah.
You can't even use it. Or Wii? Which one did that come out of?
What, Xenoblade 2 or 1?
Xenoblade 1, original.
Wii. And 3D, and then 3DS, well, new 3DS, I guess, specifically. But, Blood.
Yeah.
You brought some interesting games to the Frame Trap. One of them is Arietta of Spirits.
Yeah.
And I just don't know anything about this.
Yeah, I mean, I really didn't either. And it's funny because both of these games are basically cold calls. They were just like mailed to like our like generic Easy Allies address.
Yeah.
And I kind of, scan that for codes. And like a lot of the times the codes that come in there are just either like super low budget or like stuff that we're never going to cover, like Mechanic Simulator or whatever. Or PC Engine
like
Builder.
Crazy sex games. I get some emails like that sometimes. I'm just like, wow.
I thankfully haven't come across many of those, but we did get one like a week or two ago. I don't even want to mention it because
Blood
the titles of some of these games. I was just like, can you say that?
I got the email for the same thing.
It must have been the same one.
Yeah. The names of those games. Yeah.
2 games. Yeah. And I was just like,
it's two mobile games.
How could you put either of these on the store?
Yeah. Now that's an easy update right there.
But anyways, Arietta
the BB and Tina people.
So they emailed us and, but yeah, just to say that like, hey, there's like a lot of stuff here that like people send us and we don't end up ever doing anything with, but that doesn't mean we won't check it out,
Right.
And I think this is one is like, okay, this caught my eye. And I think they said it's like a 3-man team in Finland, 3-person team in Finland. And the game's coming out later this year. And it's kind of like a top-down Zelda-ish kind of game. But it's more... It starts out sort of grounded, real world. So basically, like you're this girl who is going with your family on summer vacation, and they kind of just like have this tradition of going to her grandmother's cabin every summer. And this is the first year that they're having to go after the grandma's passed away. And so everyone's just kind of feeling like a little weird and like, a little somber about it. And discussing it in the car on the way there. And you kind of run some errands, like the first like real gameplay thing you get into is like your mom is making this apple crumble. And so she like sends you off to the apple trees in the woods to pick some apples. And so then your dad gives you like a wooden sword you like fend off wasps. So that's the first thing, the first enemies you're fighting are these wasps. And there's even like a wasp boss fight, which is pretty fun. And then, I don't know if I made this clear, but yeah, so this is a demo that's out on Steam now, and the game is coming out later this year.
So anyone can go and check it out. That's good.
Anyone can check this out. This is an hour-long demo. But yeah, so anyway, so that night when you go to bed, you have this weird dream with like all these ghosts and stuff, and then you get woken up by this like kind of a weasel-looking ghost thing. That calls its name is Arco, and it's a spirit guide, and it kind of like starts telling you about the spirit world and all this stuff, and then like binds itself to you so that you can see the spirit world. And so what it kind of explains is that like the spirit world is just like this whole other like group of, you know, entities and things going on. And so like, you know, so they're kind of like good creatures and bad creatures, and then like, but they're not all ghosts. Ghosts are just kind of passing through. They're like people that like have something that's kind of holding them in between realms, you know, like holding them in the spirit realm, kind of like a purgatory kind of thing, until it's like something allows them to pass on to the afterlife. And so anyways, you find out that basically that like there's something up with your grandmother's ghost, and so you get to talk to your grandmother out on the pier, and find out that she had meant to pass on this family heirloom, this ring, to your mother, and she didn't get to do that because she had lost the ring. And then as a ghost, she found where the ring was in the woods, but then like all of these, you know, monsters started coming after her, and so she had to run. And then that's when you kind of really start getting into combat stuff, and you get like this more like spirit-based sword, so you can attack spirit creatures as well as the ghosts and bats, and so kind of work your way through the woods to get the ring.
So is it sort of like a Witcher setup where you have different weapons depending on the type of creature that you're fighting, and you have to
no,
switch
you don't have to
them?
swap.
Okay.
It automatically upgrades, and right here. Like one thing that's kind of hard for this in terms of a demo is that like I feel like it just scratches the basics in terms of what the gameplay is going to be like. So it's like you can roll and you can swing your sword, and that's basically it.
Gotcha.
At this point, there's not any kind of inventory in the demo, or I did come across a merchant that was like, "Hey, come see me in the morning," but the demo ends before morning comes.
Sure.
So it's kind of a tease in that sense.
I think the setup is really interesting and potentially very compelling. I feel like in a game like this, kind of a weird question, but like movement speed is important. Like I want to be able to feel like, you know, if my options offensively are limited, I at least want to be able to move fast and get through fights quickly and not feel like maybe I have to roll around everywhere. I guess just in terms of like tightness of control, did it feel pretty good?
Yeah, I think it felt okay. I think that like, yeah, learning, because a lot of the enemies that I fought definitely had kind of like a dash towards you kind of move. And so it's like learning to identify when that's going to happen and then dodge to avoid it, and then move in to hit them back. And there was a second boss fight with like one of the big spirits, which they called them roamers. That's what the evil spirits are called. And all the ones I fought looked kind of like octopus, kind of
taco.
Like, yeah. A little bit more blobby than that. They didn't have tentacles, but they just had that, you know, like an octopus body running around on like a layer of ink or something. But the boss fight was interesting because like I really had to like tighten up like what I was doing, because I got down to like one heart, and so it was like, okay, I've got to like I'm nowhere near beating this boss, so I've just got to like avoid getting hit, and I was able to like really learn the patterns of what the boss was doing and what the ads were doing, and get away from it.
That's awesome. You know, Huber always talks about dopamine moments in games, and I think that has to be like right at the top of the list is just like barely scraping by in a boss fight. And I love in JRPGs where, like, let's say you have 3 people that you're fighting with and 2 of them go down and your last member's on low health and you do that like final desperate attack to take on the boss. Wonderful feeling. Blood, this game, definitely sounds like it's coming from kind of a template that has been done before, which is not necessarily a bad thing at all. But do you feel like the demo gave you enough that you're interested in checking out the full game?
I wish it had given me a little bit more to show like what's different here other than the story. And there was like, I'd say there's maybe a bit too much talking in terms of like trying to get, just kind of get a feel for the game.
Is it voice acted or are you just reading dialogue?
You're just reading.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think that, that's probably mostly just for the purposes, of just kind of setting things up, once I got past some of those initial moments and then got out into the woods, there wasn't, as much dialogue.
Sure.
But yeah, I think it's interesting, at the end of the demo, like they kind of present the character with a choice, whether to like remain abound and keep helping, this kind of conflict that's happening in the spirit world or not. And like, it's one of those foregone conclusions where he's like, well, of course you are, there wouldn't be a game. Right. But
they could pull a Far Cry and just be like, wait here, and if you wait, the game ends.
Right.
Whichever Far Cry that was, 3 or whatever.
I think it was 4.
Have they gotten out and said anything because it's just a demo, like, hey, we're soliciting feedback and plan to make changes or anything like that, or if there's any sort of process for feedback that you saw on like maybe the Steam store page or any sort of language indicating that?
Yeah, I didn't really look into it that deeply other than just reading the email and checking it out. So I don't know, exactly what their plans are, but it's, I think it's nice to have that kind of thing out there, and I don't even know how long the demo's been around, because it's kind of hard to get release dates on that sort of thing, Sure. So I don't know if they just released this demo or if this demo has been out there for a few months or what. But
cool.
What's the name of the game again?
Arietta of Spirits.
Cool.
Outside of Xenoblade Chronicles, which took up like 100 hours of my time in a great way. I say that kind of as a compliment. But outside of that, what else has been kind of just eating up my free time is Mortal Kombat 11 Aftermath.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so funny because I reviewed Mortal Kombat 11 and I was pretty down on a lot of things with it. And it's really amazing how much the game has changed. And there's still things I don't like about it, but I think it's in a really good state now. And it's funny because I pretty much ended up checking out Aftermath. Like a big reason was I just want to play RoboCop. Like I think it's so sick that RoboCop is in this game and that he could fight Terminator and Spawn, all the Joker, all that stuff.
He looks good.
He does. He does look good.
It's a good looking model.
And for his friendship, he does the robot dance and it's funny and his fatalities are really good. And what's great about RoboCop is like he's really easy to like immediately pick up and understand. Like they made him intentionally very, very, very simple. And so he's a good way to kind of get back into the game. But I ended up sort of not only falling in love with a lot of what Aftermath was doing specifically, but I kind of got sucked into the way Mortal Kombat 11 constructed itself as a whole. And I want to talk about the story first of all, because I think even if you're not that into fighting games, the story mode is just a blast. I think it's even more fun than the vanilla MK11 story mode, and that comes down to Shang Tsung. And this like snaky little shit is so much fun to watch on screen. And every time he talks to somebody, they're just like, all right, we have to team up, but I know you suck, and I'm just waiting for you to betray us. And he just has this great shit-eating grin on him. Like he's just truly delightful to watch on screen. And he's just a much more, I think, charismatic, antagonistic figure than sort of the main baddie of Mortal Kombat 11 is, Kronika. And she's also in Aftermath. But I think Shang Tsung really brings a lot of like charisma, and the performance is really good. And it's just fun. And the Aftermath story doesn't take very long, but it's kind of like entertaining throughout. Like, it's just crazy time traveling nonsense, but it's clear they have a lot of fun with it. And the new characters they introduce, well, you know, not new to Mortal Kombat, but new to Mortal Kombat 11, like, relatively, like Nightwolf and Fujin, even though Nightwolf was at it before, but you get what I'm saying. Nightwolf and Fujin and Shiva and Sindel, they weren't part of the original story, but they're having a great time here. And Sindel kind of falls into the same category as Shang Tsung, where it's just like, you snaky jerk. Like, it's just fun watching you insult people and be evil, and how much a villain can add. And it's crazy because I think, you know, I really get attached to fighting game characters. And the story in Aftermath, I think, is presented well enough and just looks so good and is so entertaining that it made me, I think it was a perfect way to kind of get started falling in love with Mortal Kombat 11, because it's like, oh, like, now I want to play this character more just because they were so awesome in the story mode. Like, Nightwolf is just this incredible badass. And they present it in such a good way where it's like, oh, I want to go into training mode and I want to learn this character. And I think it goes to show how much of an effect story mode can have on you as a player. And I know not everybody cares about it, and I understand that a lot of places don't have the budget that NetherRealm has with these games. You know, they're making big AAA fighting games, and that's definitely not possible for everybody. But the effort is nonetheless appreciated, and it just looks so good overall that I'm way into it. I think, like, Ian and Blood, it would be fun, because I know, like, you guys aren't big fighting game players, but I think it would be fun, like, on a group stream, just to go through the story. Like, I think you would laugh at it.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Yeah. And you would have a good time.
Well, I mean, I think one of the important things there too is just, you know, like, I don't need like a crazy plot or backstories and like all this history of characters and stuff necessarily. But I think what it allows is for them to express personality. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things, you know, even though I haven't really put any time into Street Fighter 5, I feel like Street Fighter starts losing me a little bit as they add more characters, because who is this guy? You know, it's just like another guy and another, you know, in a different outfit. And it doesn't really, there's not necessarily always enough there for me to like grab on with a lot of fighting games to a new character, compared to just like some of the classics, like, you know, all of, you know, you take Samurai Showdown, for instance, like those characters are all so different from each other that it's really easy to get attached to one. And over the years, as more and more characters get added to fighting games, then too many start feeling similar. And it's just like, well, what do I care about one over the other? And that's where story mode can kind of help. Yeah,
absolutely. I think the problem a lot of times is you may get invested into a particular character, like you said, but the way a lot of games present story, it just feels so separated from everything else, where like you'll go through a character ending and you'll be like, oh, that's cool. How does this tie into everything else? And I think with fighting games and lore, sometimes it can be hard keeping track of kind of the broader narrative that's happening. And that's what's great here, is even with all of the time travel and like different realms and all of that stuff, I do think Mortal Kombat is pretty simple at its core and is easy to jump into. So, you know, I think if you are really invested in the series and you know a good amount of lore, they still pay that off in a good way. But if you haven't, I think it's simple enough to follow along and entertaining enough that you'll have a good time. I think it's another thing that Injustice does very well also. Like, I'm not a big comic book nerd or anything, but I think it's super easy to jump into Injustice. And like, if you have any basic appreciation for Batman or Robin or Harley Quinn or Superman, like, you can get a lot of that story.
Has the opposite ever happened to you, where you're playing a character in arcade mode or whatever, versus and you really fall in love with their mechanics and you really like their character until you do the story mode, and then you're like, oh, this guy sucks.
Yeah, that actually kind of happened to me with Street Fighter V, where I did not like Street Fighter V story mode that came out after the fact. And I just didn't, there were some characters in particular that I was like, I think you're trying to be funny or whatever, but it's just not really landing. Like that whole story mode felt kind of flat to me. And so I wasn't very invested in the narrative that was going on with Street Fighter V. And so I think that affected like later characters that came out after, where it's like, okay, like I don't care as much about their individual stories because I didn't like the broad story that they kind of told as a whole.
Right.
I think that story mode was really disappointing. Whereas here, I don't know, I just had a great time. Like I'm hungry for more. Like I would love another Aftermath like update to just get more story. And there's things I want to go into that are super spoilery that I won't. But beyond the story mode, like today on stream, I streamed Mortal Kombat 11, and it was so awesome that I didn't just have to, fight the CPU in towers or by myself or do like versus matches. Like we had these awesome co-op towers where I brought in, two people from chat, and we were collectively taking on really hard AI. And then as one person was fighting, the people that were waiting in the wing had like abilities that they could use to try to help out whoever was fighting, and then that person would die and the next person would come in and then they could use abilities to help fight off the boss character. And it was just...
So did you get carried or did you carry anyone?
Kind of both. Kind of both. If you go watch the stream, like I was able to do a lot of damage, but one of the guys that I was playing with was definitely a lot better than me. So both, where I felt like I was glad that I had these people around, but I also felt like I was contributing. So it was kind of the best of both worlds, I would say.
Yeah, it's kind of the way you want it.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah. But the ultimate point that I'm trying to make here is like, I feel like there are so many ways to get invested in Mortal Kombat outside of just like fighting people online, and fighting games don't always do a good job of that, where it's like, well, I may have arcade mode and then I may be able to hop online, but that's really it. Whereas here it's like, oh, I can do these crazy weird challenges that are cooperative. I have these like timed missions and I get rewards for doing all of this stuff. And then if I really compete in Towers of Time, depending on how many I complete, I may get my own rewards. If I do hop in online, there's a season going on. There's rewards unique to that. If I want to just run around this crypt and play an adventure game, kind of, and just like figure out secrets and stuff, I can do that. All of that stuff is really, really cool. And I think the problem at launch was that stuff wasn't really tuned very well. Like I remember going into Towers of Time being like, okay, this is way too ridiculous to have any sort of fun with, but they've brought that down and made it way more enjoyable. And I feel like the rate at which I'm getting currency is a lot higher. Like now I feel like I'm getting tons and tons of currency. So going into the crypt, cashing that out is more fun. It just feels smoother overall. And it feels like closer to probably how they wanted people to feel originally. And I enjoy fighting people online for sure. I don't do it a ton, but I do enjoy it. And even with that said, it's nice having all of these different options where like I can get on Mortal Kombat 11. It's like, okay, what do I really want to do right now? And I wish other fighting games could feel well-rounded or try creative weird things in the same way that this does. I think it would definitely pull in more people to the genre for sure. But yeah. I'm impressed with it. I'm surprised that it's grabbed me the way that it did. I really thought like I was kind of done with Mortal Kombat 11.
That's cool. Yeah, because I do feel like there are a lot of times when a DLC for something will come out, and even if you cared about the game, like Borderlands 3. Like I really enjoyed Borderlands 3 a lot, and they've been having events and doing DLC, and I'm like, yeah, I'm done. I'm like, I don't have any like real pull to like jump back into that game for whatever reason. And and it was the opposite with Borderlands 2. Every time DLC came out for Borderlands 2. It was like I was on it. Like, yeah, doing that, reviewing every one of those.
Yeah, it's funny. Like maybe without RoboCop, I wouldn't have touched it at all. You know, it speaks to the power of guest characters.
Yeah.
Did you when you saw RoboCop in the thing, did you say to yourself, "I'll buy that for $1"?
I did not, but they I don't remember what thing specifically. They name, I think, like a move or something of his. I'd buy that for $1.
Oh, funny! I saw. I was watching a Mr. Sunday Movies video today, and they referenced the That's why I know what the RoboCop model looks like, and they have one of the finish him moves, whatever.
Fatalities
is he shoots a guy through the genitals.
Yeah.
And hits a grenade that he previously threw over his back. And I'm like, that's the right mix of RoboCop reference and over the top Mortal Kombat insanity.
Yeah, they reference dick shots in multiple ways, which is pretty funny. Before I forget, I guess, just because I've been playing it a lot recently, the last thing I want to say about Mortal Kombat 11 that I really don't like is crushing blows.
Sure, yeah.
I feel like they just end up being very frustrating. And so what crushing blows are is they're conditions that you fulfill with specific moves. So like, if you do this move and it's a counter hit, you'll get a bunch more damage. And so the way that ends up playing out during a match is like something will happen and suddenly you just, because it's a crushing blow, you'll just lose like way more health. And I think the thing that's frustrating about it is some characters have really good crushing blows where it feels like it's just going to happen. And some characters' crushing blows are way more specific where it's like, oh man, I really got to like line these things up in order for that extra damage to happen. And it can be really frustrating, I think, when you're playing a character whose crushing blows may not be that good, and you're playing another character whose crushing blows are really, really good. It's just sort of this imbalance that like isn't satisfying. And like if the character has really, really good crushing blows, when it happens, you're not like, oh, I really earned that. It's like, no, that character just has super easy to do crushing blows. And so it's a system that like I think just kind of feels bad in a way that I don't like.
It sounds really hard. It'd be very, very hard to balance if they didn't all have the same trigger conditions for every character.
Right.
Balancing that sounds really hard.
Yeah, I think everybody has one where it's like if you do an uppercut and you're countering a high, you get a bunch more damage, something like that. But yeah, just in general, I think the idea behind it is like, oh, I have to do this risky thing and I get a huge payoff. And then that kind of plays into the mind game where it's like, okay, I know that he knows that I'm going for the crushing blow. So I'm going to make him think that I'm going for that, but I'm going to trip him up. But I think in practice, it just ends up feeling kind of cheap in a way that I don't really like. But yeah, just I think one notable critique there. I will say that like the quality of my connections, this is why one of the reasons that Mortal Kombat 11 is now in Evo, now that they're doing it online, is because it has good netcode. And so, yeah, the quality of my connections has been pretty solid for sure, which is nice.
Nice.
Very important.
Yes. But Ian, I've got some good news for you.
Uh-oh.
We have a new feature on this show.
Ooh.
Called BESTAKE. And what this is going to be, so this is my idea for replacing caught in a frame trap right now. And Ian, you gave us the BESTAKE. And what it's going to be is at the halfway point of the show, roughly, whoever gave an opinion that I really like, I'm going to highlight them. And I came at you and I was like, oh man, didn't you kind of get sick of the basic Clubhouse games after a while? And you were like, sometimes I just want to play something immediately. Sometimes I need something where I'm going to wind down. And I was like, you know what, Ian, I get that. Sometimes you just need a game that's simple that you can chill out to. So I really responded to that. And because the title of this podcast references fighting game terminology, I'm going to ask you to see how long you can keep an opinion combo going.
Oh my God.
So,
oh my.
Yeah, you gave me a good thing that I really responded to. Now I want you to say another opinion that is strong. Putting you on the spot.
Okay.
Both praising you and putting you on the spot. But I want to see if you can keep an opinion combo. It could be about anything. It doesn't have to be games. Just a good opinion.
Shoot. A good opinion. Well, I mean, the times we live in, forgive me, but Black Lives Matter is the first opinion that comes to mind.
Absolutely. What better opinion is there?
I could think of few other good opinions right now.
I think that opinion is so good, we're like in an infinite combo.
Here's another good one. Wash your hands. That's hygienic. That's a good one.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and wear a mask. People forget that we're still in a pandemic.
Yeah. Cases, still out there. It's still a pandemic. Another good, I hope that the rumored Bloodborne remaster is real. Bless you.
Bloodborne with a consistent frame rate.
Yeah,
we don't ask for much.
Yeah, I don't want to, I daren't dream for even a steady frame rate.
I just hope that it is, because I just, like with Ben in like your Xenoblade review, and you're talking about like, well, the resolution's not that high, and it, once in a while there's frame rate things, and I'm like, man, this is what a remaster is supposed to do. It's supposed to make all this stuff as perfect as possible. And it's like, okay.
That's an opinion assist from Bloodworth.
The answer is put it on the PC.
Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
And that's something I'm excited about with Bloodborne too, as well. But it is funny though, because From Software games are notorious for not letting you mod even a little bit if you're online. It like that you can get banned or whatever. Because I'm playing with a PS4 controller on my PC, so I have the, it took me a little while to adjust, and now it's fine. But I've got the Xbox buttons, and I just wanted to look. I was like, is there a mod that just puts the PS4 buttons in here, like completely innocuous, doesn't give me an edge at all?
Yeah.
And then someone was like, you can mod it, but you might get kicked. And I was like, well, not worth it.
Yeah.
But yeah, more opinions, eh? Let's see.
No. Ian, you're actually BMing right now because you performed a flawless victory.
Okay, good.
You are at 100% life.
Well, then I'll just bow. I'll bow to my...
Yeah. Oh, I like it.
Yeah.
You could also choose to perform a friendship here if you want.
Shake hands.
Okay. All right. That's your friendship, is you reach out your hand and just shake it. But yeah, flawless
Even though
victory.
handshaking gives me like hives right now, even if I see it on like a video or something, I'm like, oh, you can't touch people.
Yeah. But no, you handled our first BESTAKE very, very well. Well done.
Love it.
This BESTAKE is brought to you by some wonderful shout out to your patrons. And if you want to find out more on this about this $250 tier, if you would like your name shouted out on the podcast, please go to patreon.com/easyallies. Our first one is Blue. Shout out. Caleb, Togi, Crawford. Shout out. Elthanas. Shout out. Oh, Blood, you mixed it up there a little bit. I appreciate it. Little change in tone. Greg the Dark Knight Kettering.
Shout out.
Shout out.
And Jessie Blu.
Shout out.
Shout out. Happy birthday, if I'm not mistaken.
To Jessie Blu?
I think so.
Happy birthday, Jessie Blu.
Perhaps the day we filmed this, not the day they will see it.
Right.
They say people with June birthdays just absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Ian, well, let's just keep your train rolling. Why don't we?
All right.
You mentioned Souls, and I like this because rarely, usually with Frame Trap we get a whole new batch of games coming in, but you're actually doing like a relay race with Huber here, kind of. He's like handing you the baton. he started replaying Dark Souls 2, and then that inspired you to play Dark Souls 2, and now you're replaying it and bringing it to Frame Trap.
Yeah. And he's on 3, I guess, now, so maybe I'll go through 3 again. My memory of 3 is very foggy, and I'm finding as I'm going through 2 that my memory is like crystalline. It's so pure.
Oh, really?
And I think like but it's also dreamlike. Like there are so many areas of Dark Souls 2. And I think that's something that with Souls games and Bloodborne that sticks with me so intensely is the environments, because I just love the environment design of these games. It's maybe one of my favorite aspects. And certain areas of this game are just like drilled into my mind, like Forest of Fallen Giants, Heat's Tower of Flame, like Shrine of Amana, Drangleic Castle, like all of these, like as soon as I get back in them, I'm like, oh yeah, it feels like I'm home again, you know? Shaded Ruins is a really good one.
Absolutely. There are some incredible environments in Dark Souls 2, some of the best in the series, but I also feel like that's complemented by areas where I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't like that place. Like, I'm just like, oh yeah, there's a tremendous amount of poison. Admittedly, my memory of Dark Souls 2 is hazier than probably some of the other games, because it's been a while since I've revisited it, and I revisited Dark Souls 1 relatively recently.
Well, and the thing that's funny about Dark Souls 2 is, discounting that's where they put the DLC warp things in a couple of cases. Like when you get to a primordial bonfire, oftentimes it's a dead end. It doesn't loop back around. Sometimes it does. There's a door like in the other room that links to a new area. But like, yeah, it's a game that has like more tendrils going out. Yeah. Whereas Dark Souls 1 and Bloodborne and stuff, it feels like it flows into itself a little more, especially Dark Souls 1. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. Dark Souls 2 is interesting because it sort of feels like a combination of Dark Souls and Demon Souls, because it feels like you go back to the hub more often. You to level and stuff, of course, because you can only level at the Emerald Lady or whatever. But yeah, it's cool, but it's just got such good vibes. Majula has such good vibes.
I was going to bring up Majula and what Majula an excellent
rules
area it is. Yeah.
And like, I think they did a lot of really interesting stuff with NPCs in this game, interactions that you have, a lot of really colorful characters. I was just thinking about the like lady who teaches you miracles, who's like a liar, like doesn't believe in anything, but is just doing it to make money. But she's the one who like opens the path to go the other direction to the hunter's ward or whatever it's called. It's just fun little weird stuff like that. It's just like, yeah, all right. Also, maybe even more obtuse than Dark Souls 1. Like there's so much stuff in that game that you would just miss.
Sure.
If you didn't know about it or hadn't heard about it, which is fun replaying it. And I'm replaying it too because I think there was one DLC I never actually finished because AJ, for some reason, said I should go into New Game Plus so I could help him on a boss or something. Or he just wanted me to go into New Game Plus. I don't even know why he wanted me to go to New Game Plus. I knew there were DLCs coming, so I went into way back in the day, went into New Game Plus. And then the DLCs were out, and I was like, "Oh my god, I gotta like get back to the bottom of the like Grave of Saints or wherever the hell you have to go to get into this new DLC." And I was like way under leveled because I was playing all the DLCs in New Game Plus. Then
I can't believe it. AJ did you like this, and then went off to become a wildly successful voice actor. The nerve of this guy.
The nerve of this guy.
The nerve of this guy.
It is really funny though, and playing on Scholar of the First Sin on PC, it's like a remix. Stuff is moved around. It's in like weird different enemies in different places. It's kind of like one of those mods where it's like a randomizer, except just it is the way it is, which I forgot or didn't know. Also weirdly easy.
Yeah,
it's maybe because I'm just like, I played every Souls game and I've played this game before, so I know that it's
and Sekiro beat you into the ground.
Yeah, it's 9/10 confidence. But like, man, like I don't think I've had to fight a boss more than twice. The normal enemies get me more than the bosses by a wide margin.
Well, it's funny because this is something that Huber brought up as well, where, you know, some bosses really stick out and feel like they have a lot going on and are super memorable. But then there are other bosses where it's like, I feel like I just kind of sneezed on that thing and the fight was over and it kind of just immediately evaporates from your mind. And it sounds like that's exactly the experience that you're having.
Which is funny because for me, the bosses, I like them, but they're not like, the bosses aren't what I'm there for. I'm there to like explore, find the secrets, find all the items, like get my build right, see the environments, fight all the enemies. And then the bosses, usually if they're super hard, just are, you know, barriers to more of that. So it's kind of funny. And I'm like far into the game now. I just got to Shrine of Amana or whatever it's called. And I'm like level 110 or some weird thing.
If I remember correctly, Shrine of Amana is one of my favorite areas.
It's very cool. Yeah. It's definitely one I had. I have very real memories of that one.
Yeah,
and but it's just such a fun game, and so I'm looking forward to doing the DLCs because my memory of those is foggy or non-existent, I think, in the case of the one I didn't do.
I have a pretty like clear memory of the first one where it had that like, it was like really poisonous and it had that big pyramid in the center and all that. But yeah, I ended up not finishing all of those either.
Yeah, I remember there's a snowy one.
Yep, and there's a fire one.
Yeah, where everything looks like it's ash.
Yeah.
I remember one that was like undergroundish. You have to like, there's like a lot of like cement.
You might be thinking of the poison one.
Yeah, maybe. Must be.
Yeah, there's a lot of like just statues covered in poison and stuff like that.
Yeah.
By and large,
you have to go down the hole to get down to that one, I think. Yeah.
Down
after the rotten.
Ian, since like kind of uncovering the magic of the Souls game seems why you're there, right? Like to have those moments where I think you kind of uncover those quirky characters like you mentioned, or, you know, find some sort of secret or go off the beaten path. Do you feel like you're kind of in a great position where your memory is hazy enough that it sort of feels like the first time all over again? I imagine it being Scholar of the First Sin that helps out, but even so, with the rate at which you're going through it sounds like the magic is kind of rejuvenated.
Yeah, it's perfect because I get the best of both worlds, right? I get the nostalgia, I get the memories of like, oh yeah, like what a fun time this was playing this back in the day, you know. And I get my memories foggy enough that I get to experience things anew. But with the benefit of experience, so I don't like suck at it. But yeah, it's a fun way to play through them, and that's why I was hoping for a Demon Souls remaster so much, because I played it, you know, long after I had played Dark Souls 1 and 2, and I think I played it after I played 2.
I can't believe Demon Souls is like 11 years old.
It's old, yeah.
Oh boy!
But like it'd be perfect. And I'm a little bummed if the rumors are true and Bluepoint is doing the Bloodborne one. That means that they aren't doing Demon Souls, or at least not maybe right now. But Bloodborne is just so perfect. I would play that again in a heartbeat. So
right, it's like whatever one they do, if they were to do one.
Yeah, I think for me, the main reason I'd want Demon Souls is just because I never did get to play it, and now like servers are offline, and I would prefer to play one of those games online.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Well, I mean, there are things specific in Demon Souls that you definitely want to experience online if you can.
World tendency.
Well, a boss fight in particular, but
that boss fight is very interesting. Also, a lot of cool online stuff in Dark Souls 2, like the Bellkeeper Covenant, the Rat Boys, a lot of cool Covenant stuff.
Yeah, I really think that's what they really nailed into.
Yeah.
Like I got in into online stuff, and 2 more than any of the other games.
Well, and it's like, it's the perfect thing because, and the Pilgrims of Dark, which I just unlocked the ability to actually do now, is a PvE covenant, which was kind of not really a thing as much in the Dark Souls series, but like Bellkeeper Covenant is awesome. It's fun. I'm not great at PvP. Like whatever. I'm just not very good. But like, and I don't do like the gimmicks where it's like, oh, you just use the lightning and the thing and then you kill everyone. But what's cool about the Bellkeeper Covenant is you can get into it at a time when you really need Titanite chunks, and it's a really good way to get Titanite chunks. And even if you're like me and you're not that great, like every third or fourth encounter you might win, and then it feels like the right amount of, not getting pounded into the ground like you did in the Forest Covenant. Dark Souls 1 by like gankers. And I mean, there are gankers, but it's like kind of hilarious. Like the whole Bellkeeper Covenant thing is just kind of fun and silly.
Yeah.
Same with Rat Boys, honestly. Like,
oh, Rat. Yeah, the Rat's so fun.
Rat Boys is hilarious, especially when you're like, you've got all the traps kitted out. I got when I first got to Doors of Pharaohs, I got summoned into somebody's world as a gray spirit, which is what happens if they're in the Covenant. You get summoned into their version of the game, and you have to try to make it through. And they had all the traps going, and what, as is customary sometimes for the Rat Boys, they were like just leading me through the thing and trying to see if I got hit by the traps. They would like watch to see if I got hit by the traps, and they would like dance around, and then I wouldn't because like I know the traps.
Yeah.
So then I like got around them all and just killed all the guys, no problem. And then like at the very end, I got to him, and he was in like the end part. And he like, I'm pretty sure he didn't even like try to fight me. He tried a little bit, and then I just destroyed it.
That was your reward at the end of the gauntlet.
Yeah. It was really funny.
I think Souls is such a perfect example of like players enhancing the game so much, and it's kind of being like a perfect storm where there are enough rules and restrictions in place, but it's loose enough that there's room for like creativity and expression, and just like the ways, the memes that would come out of things and the way people would communicate with each other felt very like distinct and memorable. I think all of the Souls games have that to some extent. That's really cool.
Some of my favorite stuff in all the Souls games, but I mean, especially in 1, because it was, and 2 actually, and 3, all of them, is the dueling that you would get into, and like the sort of like unspoken rules of dueling in that game, where it's like you bow first, you don't heal, you don't use any gimmicks, it's just honor. But then the secondary unspoken rule where if someone doesn't bow, all bets are off. You could be as a bastard, you can cheat and do whatever, not cheat actually, but like you can cheese them and stuff. Just little stuff like that is like unspoken rules of communication. I love it.
Yes, I also adore that stuff in games, and fighting games definitely have that too. Like in Mortal Kombat, when you're doing Combat League, it's best of 3, and so it's like, the game does not enforce this, but it's considered bad manners to fatality before the final game, right? So like you win game 1, you shouldn't fatality because you got more games to play, and so it's like, it's kind of this rule that the community is kind of talking about, like what is appropriate conduct, and I think that stuff is so fascinating.
And what's awesome about stuff like that is like I don't remember ever hearing about, like no one ever told me these rules. It's just you gather them through doing it.
Right.
And you see someone bow to you, and then you're like, oh, that's what we do. Okay. And then it just becomes this like thing,
Yeah. It's a really great kind of cycle of getting into a game where you play it and you don't fully understand everything. So you go online and then you kind of get embedded in the community. And then when you revisit the game, you sort of see things from a new light. Yeah. It's a really cool process. I threw the same question at Huber when he was on here, Ian, but I feel like the general kind of consensus at Easy Allies is like 2 is a great game, no doubt, but the weakest of the Souls games. Do you feel that way? And if you do you still feel that way after revisiting it?
Yeah, this is something I've been thinking about, and it's like, to me, it's down between 2 and 3. And it's funny because 3, I have the least memory of 3. 2, for whatever reason, I really remember. And 3, I remember kind of just like breezing through and finishing, and then I didn't really think about it anymore, even though I did the same thing I do with all Souls games. I like was steeped in it, I was like learning all the lore and stuff too. But for whatever reason, it just didn't stick with me as much. So yeah, if I do revisit 3 after this, which I'm sure I will, I'll have to reevaluate. But yeah, it's like I was telling my friend Pam, who's gone through every Souls game and Sekiro now, besides 2, and I was saying, like, I mean, it's maybe not the best of the series, but it's like a 9 amongst 10s, Right. It's like a 9.5 amongst 10s. And I mean, I don't know, maybe 3 and 2 are tied. 2 a 9 amongst 9.8s. Yeah. 2's weaknesses, I think, are made up for in other areas.
Yeah.
Like the hitboxes in 2 are not good. Like, they're not good.
Just like the pursuer and like the way that his sword would like magnetize to your body.
The tracking and the hit detection and tracking it's like unfair. And especially on some of the larger, like the Hedonites or whatever, sometimes you just get hit and like you can see that the sword didn't hit you, stuff like that is like very rare in a Souls game where it feels unfair sometimes. Right. But then to me, that's offset by such interesting areas and such cool designs and such fun kind of just, and I mean, I haven't finished it yet. So maybe my memory of stuff after Shrine of Amana is foggier. I don't really remember what's coming next. So maybe there's a reason for that. I don't know.
I feel like kind of the final set of bosses and the final bosses in particular is kind of disappointing, but I'm curious if that still holds true, because I know boss fights aren't, like you said, the reason that you're there.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because like I love a boss fight if I like lose once and then beat it. Like that's my favorite kind. Which of course is hilarious in a Souls game. But it's interesting now because to me the especially playing Scholar of the First Sin edition is like the end of the story of the main game is like the pre-ending, and the DLCs are the, then what I get to do. So even if the final boss is disappointing, like I have the DLCs to do then.
Sure.
So which I know I have 2 of the keys to get into 2 of them for sure. So I could go and do them now, but I think I'm going to, because I think they're meant to be post-game, but maybe they all say worthy of a monarch. So I think you have to at least kill the king to go to, or like not have to, but I think they're geared for a character who's leveled appropriately to have killed the king. Which if I remember right is not the end of the game, but I don't remember the end. But
Blood, diving back into your bag of wonderful mysteries, you got another game that I don't know anything about that I'm excited to learn about, and that is Wildfire. And this was so good, you even did the classic like message people in Slack being like, hey, this is cool. And I always love when that happens. It doesn't happen often, but whenever like an ally, and you never know who it's going to be, probably Huber, or me, Huber, will just like randomly at like midnight or 11 or 2 a.m. or something be like, guys, this game, it's awesome. And you kind of had that moment with Wildfire, or at least the beginning, I guess.
Yeah. I'm not that far into it, just like a couple hours. I've done like 7 or 8 levels, and it is level based, so it's not like a big connected thing. But it is, it's another game that was kind of just sent to our inbox, and it looked interesting just from the kind of like gifts and stuff they had in the email. And then I've also had seen like it's been getting good reviews and stuff out there, and so I'm like, okay, like this is really like I immediately had already like responded well to it, and then like seeing like more people talking about like, okay, I should probably really give this a shot. And it's so side-scrolling game, so kind of thinking like almost like a Metroidvania platformer, but it's also a stealth game. Which is a combination that I don't feel we see very much.
I feel like Mark of the Ninja, kind of.
Yeah. That's what came to mind too.
Which is an underappreciated game for sure. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
But I mean, maybe like at least at this point so far, there is not any way to really attack an enemy directly. You don't like assassinate enemies or anything like that. But you do have like tall grass that you hide in, and you can like whistle at enemies to kind of attract their attention, and then like move, while they're coming to investigate a point. And then kind of and then there's like ledges, like so you can like kind of like drop down from a ledge and like shimmy along the ledge, and so stuff like that. It's kind of 3D in a way, and like the way that you interact with it, but you're still always on like a 2D plane.
Can you do like Metal Gear Solid 2 style push-ups or pull-ups and like increase your stamina?
No, okay. You don't have to increase your stamina. You do have to worry about holding your breath and water. If your oxygen runs out, like that's it. You're dead.
Okay. It doesn't do the like life draining slowly thing. It's like,
right.
No, okay.
No, like oxygen's out, you're dead. But what's interesting is it's and another really thing that I've picked up on that I like a lot is it's very good with positional audio. And so early on, before like things really start going down, you're walking through this town, and I can hear, kind of like medieval, like fair music type of thing, but I hear it coming like more faintly out of just like one headphone. And then as I walk into the center of town, it gets louder. And then as I walk past to the outskirts, now it's moved over to the other headphone.
Very cool.
Yeah. So really kind of, it's probably not, what you would classify as binaural audio, but really using similar tricks.
Mm-hmm.
And the same goes for like when guards are walking around, like you can tell how close a guard is and what direction it's in just from your headphones. So very much a good game to put headphones on.
I mean, it sounds like a good audio setup, whether that be like headphones or just really good speakers, would be required in a way. Like you wouldn't want to play this on like of like laptop speakers. It sounds like you'd be doing yourself a huge disservice. Yeah,
I don't know if it required like gameplay wise, but it definitely adds to that sense of immersion. It definitely, like, even though it's like, a pixel art based game, and you have somewhat small sprites, the audio really makes it feel like like you're really more in the world a lot.
Blood, with the stealth, I feel like this is a classic stealth game conundrum. Is you have to tune it just right, where you feel the tension of getting through an area, especially when you're limited on what you can do offensively, but not make it so trial and error that like every step of the game becomes agonizing. Like, where do you think this falls?
I think it falls in a pretty good place. And one thing that I like that you can kind of pick up on right away, is that they're like optional objectives. So like there's some basic things like not getting spotted, not killing any enemies, and there's even like bonuses for like basically speedrun targets. So you get through as quickly as you can. But where things get more interesting with this game is it really does a good job of like stacking things on in layers, right? So you start off with the stealth, and sneaking around and getting through some areas. And I think like one of the first things you do is you find, like, you're just trying to like get a chicken that's run off into the woods, right? And it does like kind of the
like
Zelda.
You do.
It does kind of the Zelda thing where you jump off a cliff holding the chicken and you kind of float further.
Don't try that at home.
Don't try that at home. That does not work. But then in that intro, this meteorite crashes down outside of town. And so you go to investigate it. And through a series of events, it seems like this meteorite gives you the ability to absorb and use fire. So if there's a source of fire, then you just kind of like pull it towards yourself, and now you've got a fireball that you can throw. But you have to use that resource wisely, because say if there's a campfire there, you absorb that campfire. Now that fire is gone. Oh. So if you throw that fireball and you don't light anything else on fire, well, now you've got to go find fire somewhere else. But at the same time, when you light flammable objects like the tall grass, now you've got like source to like, okay, now I can get another fireball out of the fire that's burning right now. And so the fire is really cool and dynamic the way it works, because it's sort of like a 2D version of like Breath of the Wild or Far Cry or something, where it's like if there's flammable objects, the fire just spreads and spreads and spreads, and it goes up vines, and that's the main way that like you can kind of deal with a lot of these soldiers that are patrolling.
So that's how you kill guys, because you mentioned not killing anyone as an objective, but you said before you couldn't kill anybody.
Yeah, so you don't attack them directly, but you light a fire near them, and then they start running off. And
it's like a wildfire.
Yeah.
That's the name of the game.
There it is.
Oh.
And so sometimes they're so panicked that they'll just run right off a cliff.
Oh, wow.
That's how I've ended up killing people. Even in places when I didn't attend it. And then
Bad boy Bloodworth over here.
I feel like this gives a whole new meaning to the phrase "blood takes them to the woods."
And so sometimes you'll have to burn like objects and things that are blocking tunnels. Some of those optional objectives I was talking about, there was like one where I had to scare two soldiers in a given level. There's one where I had I think one of the harder ones to like try to figure out was like I had to burn 90% of the vegetation in the level. So it was like really tricky to figure out like, okay, how do I do this and then not get myself killed? Because like after a while that panic will go away. And now I don't have any vegetation to hide in. And some of these levels start getting more and more complex of like, okay, you're climbing up around this way, and then you can come down over here. And then there's also like meteorites that kind of buff different abilities. You can get one that like allows like your fireballs to bounce more. And there's and then you start getting these additional abilities to where like there's one now where like you basically use your fireball to do a double jump that's kind of like a rocket jump. So if you have a fireball, you can jump, and then you jump again to like blast up, but then your fireball is gone. So you've got to again be careful about how you use your resources.
This game sounds like just a blast to play.
It sounds fun. If you do that above a flammable thing, it'll start that on fire though, right? The rocket jump thing?
I haven't tried it. I don't think it would. I mean, maybe if you did, like you'd have to be in a very particular spot. But, and then there's some other neat little things to where there's like, there's like these ancient stones. There's something going on with a meteorite and these other like ancient stones that are in the environment.
Yeah.
And those serve as your checkpoints.
Okay. I was actually just going to ask about checkpoints, so I'm glad.
Yeah. So far I've only seen like one checkpoint per level. The levels are not super long.
Okay. That was my question. All right.
Yeah. But the more I get into it, the more complex that they're getting. But what's cool about these stones sometimes that you come across is they sort of give you tips as to like what's coming up in a level, but at the same time, those tips are like told in like poetry. So they're really cool to read, like they're really well written. And then there are also like these statues that have like kind of like basins that like you light on fire. I'm trying to think, like braziers kind of. And those will give you points to like basically upgrade those skills. So like the fire jump, like even though it's like something that's required, you need those skill points to get, and then you can augment it and like make it so that you can jump further and higher and stuff like that.
That doesn't ever run into a point where because you didn't upgrade something in a certain way, you can't move forward, right?
And not that I've seen. Like you have to, so far it's like a linear progression. So it's like you cannot unlock the next thing until you've upgraded the thing before it. And then there are other augments that you can get from what they call spirit points. And those you get from the optional objectives. So it's another incentive to do those. So that like, I think once you get 5, then you can actually like go to a checkpoint to heal.
Oh, okay.
And stuff like that. And then, you can eavesdrop on guards. And then, so then the next couple of things I got into. So when you were off investigating this meteorite, the where the soldiers came in is this invading force came in and burned your town down and basically kidnapped all the villagers.
Classic JRPG setup.
And so, so now I'm getting into this situation where I'm having to rescue villagers. And there's this interesting thing with the stones where like you just bring a villager to a checkpoint stone and they just kind of like teleport, I guess, I don't know, back to town or wherever they go. Like, but the first one I came across, they had a broken ankle. So I had to carry them. And so that limits your stealth options because if you're carrying somebody, you can't carry them into tall grass. So you kind of have to like set them down and then kind of figure out what's going on, what the situation is, and then pick them up and then move them to the next area. And then
I feel like that in particular, like everyone does, but I always get so frustrated by escort missions or having to like babysit somebody. So that would be something where it's like, cool idea. And I'm glad you're mixing things up, but too much of that I can imagine would drive me crazy.
Yeah. It doesn't necessarily feel like that because it's not so much that you're not like trying to defend them from a bunch of things like shooting arrows or something like that. You just, you need to, be aware of like what you're doing more cautiously. And then similarly with the last level I just did, I actually had to guide 4 characters through using my whistle. So like if you whistled, if you hit the button to whistle, they would follow you. And if you would hold the button, then they would stop in place where they were at. And so there's again a similar kind of thing. It was like, okay, I've got to figure out like what the enemy is doing to be able to like get them to a place that they can hide because they're louder than me. Like they don't move as quietly. And then also like pickpocket keys and open routes for them and all of that. And then the one little extra nugget they threw in there in between all this is you have like a pet bobcat, and in the attack you're separated from the bobcat. So I did this level where I'm just playing as the bobcat trying to get reunited with my master.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, cool.
And so now I'm just like slashing and killing guards as a bobcat.
Pure catharsis. Yeah.
And I don't know how that story is going to lead. So it's like it's almost like 2 separate characters. But like I said, this game is really good about like building on top of all of these systems. And so I already know from the pitch and the email that fire is just one element that you control. That there's also like water and being able to like make vegetation grow. And this game can also be played co-op.
Oh, wow.
So I'm curious how that works.
Can one of you be the bobcat? You can like coordinate attack. Blood, this game sounds legitimately awesome. And what is even extra special is I just looked it up on Steam and it's only $15.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, super cheap.
Is it Steam only or is it on Switch too?
I only know about Steam. I'm not sure. Let me see if they said anything there, but
yeah, this is awesome. It looks like it. Oh no, it looks like it's out of beta. Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's out. They only linked me on the Steam page.
Yeah, I think it's just Steam and maybe
it came
GOG.
from Humble Bundle.
Game Informer Australia says, well worth checking out for the cerebral stealth aficionado. Indie Former says, pyromaniacs rejoice. Which I like. Now,
nice.
that sounds really, really cool. But speaking of really cool, so we did a charity stream and our community was amazingly supportive of it. And during that charity stream, in the back half, we played Sea of Thieves. And I had a blast playing Sea of Thieves. And I hadn't...
Sea of Thieves, dude. It's back.
I hadn't really given it a chance since launch. And I remember playing it at launch and like thinking it was cool, but I kind of got bored. And so I dropped it. But I don't know. That stream really reignited my interest in it. And I haven't played a ton, but definitely played some more with my wife. And there's so many things that I admire about that game where it is really smart in the way that it is hands off. Like it kind of is like, okay, we're going to give you this thing and then you just kind of go. We're not going to tell you too much. We're going to like show you the island that you need to go to. We're going to show you like where the treasure chests are, but we're not going to, give you a mini map or something. They leave enough space for you to have fun with your friends. And I definitely do think playing this game with at least one other person makes a huge difference because like trying to like go down and look at the map and steer the ship and like plug up holes and do water, like you really need a crew of people, I think, to get the most out of it. But just the way it kind of naturally facilitates your own stories coming to life is really, really cool. Like you get on an island and then like, your buddy is screaming like, oh, I'm getting attacked by skeletons, or like, you dig a hole in the ground and there are worms and you eat them and all of a sudden you start throwing up, or you grab some treasure, right, and you're trying to swim back to the boat and you get attacked by a shark. Like all of these things happen in a way where they feel just really natural and fun. And I think they definitely cultivate this true sense of adventure. And I think other games that are kind of like open-ended like this, where you kind of make your own fun, I think a problem that they fall into is they are overly complicated. And Sea of Thieves really isn't. Like, you've got a radial menu for your items. Things on your ship are pretty clearly labeled. Like, it's pretty intuitive. Like, even having not played for forever, there was a small learning curve, but jumping in, like, getting everything to happen, like getting out into the sea and sailing, and going off after treasure happens super quickly. Like you kind of learn as you go in a very satisfying way. And so I think it was extremely smart of them to design it in such a way where like you could probably get anybody on and kind of immediately jump into the fun. So I think that's really, really cool. And I know Ian, you're a fan of Sea of Thieves. Did the group stream like kind of reignite your interest at all?
Yeah. I mean, everything you said about it is, some of my favorite stuff. Like just the fact that it requires you to, like, I love it when games just give you tools, be they literal tools, like a compass and a shovel in this case, and a spyglass, or like Breath of the Wild gives you, your tools, or certain games are like Outer Wilds is knowledge based, but you gain like knowledge, which is a tool that lets you then go and do a thing because you just didn't know about it before. That's some of my favorite things in gaming, and this game does that so well, where it's like, like you have a map and you know what the island looks like, so you go look at your ship's map, find the island that looks like that, say, oh, it's north of us, you use your compass to go north. It's like, and no mini maps, no waypoint markers. I really respect that. And it's funny because how different things would be for games, like this or No Man's Sky or whatever, if they had just said alpha or early access when they first came out, because like it caught a bad rap, I think. But the foundation for this game, which when it came out, to be fair, was all it was a good foundation and no real substance. The foundation for Sea of Thieves is so good. Like the water, like all of us marveled, and like Omar like marveled at just how good the water looks and how impressive the physics of that water. Like
every time I set sail,
water only comes in through a hole in the ship if it actually comes up and hits that hole on the ship. It's just like so good.
Well, and just how effectively they sort of seamlessly do like different types of seas. So what I mean is like how different it feels when things are calm and then when a storm kicks up and like your compass is blowing and like water's coming in through the hatches and just it does such a remarkable job of really making, like, nothing else could need to happen. Like, you don't even need sharks or skeletons or whatever. Just sailing on the water is exciting in and of itself. And I think that's really cool. So it's not just, point A and B itself that are interesting and the things that you do there. It is the entire journey. And that's really crucial.
I really like the color palette and the graphical design of this game. And the I think Jones commented on it too during the stream, but the day-night cycle is really, really well done.
Yeah.
I think the time is correct on it, and nighttime looks really good. Sunsets and sunrise in this game are beautiful. Like, every piece of media I've done surrounding Sea of Thieves, I've always just ended up at some point staring at a sunset or a sunrise because it looks truly fantastic.
Yeah.
And the ambient light. And yeah, I like that kind of low poly but detailed kind of vibe anyway. But Sea of Thieves is nice, man. But you're right. Like, I've played it alone back in the day, and I had a funny moment where two people came up, and it was proximity mic, and I had my proximity mic on, and I was in my little skiff, my one-person ship.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, hey friend, we're not dangerous. We're not dangerous." They're like, "So you out here on your own, or you got a crew out there?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm just on my own." And then they immediately just killed me and stole all my stuff. And then when I respawned, I heard them laughing like, "I'm on my own." And I was like, okay, lesson learned. Like, always lie.
That's something else that I really admire about it, and not to like dogpile more on Fallout 76 because I haven't played it in a really long time, but I
hear that new DLC is okay.
Yeah, totally.
I find it hard to believe.
The point that I just want to make is it was like, I remember you and I playing Fallout 76 together, and it was like, I think the only reason we're getting any enjoyment out of this is because we're together. Whereas like, all the stuff that I was praising about Sea of Thieves, that wasn't even accounting for other people and the interactions that you can have and the stories like you just told. Like, that only adds to the mix, but there's other stuff going on, using that word foundation, like you said, that make the game feel really strong. The one thing that was disappointing though is, like, I was playing on PC and my wife was playing on Xbox. That didn't make sense. And I looked online, and it seems like other people have had this problem where it just like wouldn't load into the game. Like, I invited her into a party and it just like got hung on the loading screen, and then we just rebooted it and it worked. And it's like, okay, that's weird. This game has been out a long time. This is a weird problem to have.
When we played online all PC, you took way longer to load in for some reason than the rest of us too.
Yeah. And maybe it's just something on my end, admittedly. Maybe it's just me messing up, but that was like the one minor frustration that I had. I had a heartbreaking story. It's like kind of a cool story, so I'm not... You want moments like this to happen, but I was playing by myself, and I did a voyage where I had to go to 2 different islands, and I got 3 treasure chests, and like I had done all this work, and I was coming back, and a storm happened, and like my compass was spinning, so I couldn't keep track of where I was going, and I crashed into a rock, and I just lost everything. It's just like... It'd be one thing if it was like I grabbed 1 chest and then that happened, but having all 3 really broke my heart.
That's something I love about it, where it's like that rising tension.
Yeah.
Because like I love that things take the time that they take in that game. And it's like the rising tension of, do we stay out and keep doing missions or do we go back? And like the smaller your crew, the more likely you are maybe to go back and cash in more often. But like, yeah, when like during our stream, like we had 4 or 5 skulls on there, a bunch of weird knickknacks, like some chests and stuff.
Right.
And it's just like, we got to get out of here. Like when that shark was chasing us, the megalodon or whatever, I was just like, oh god, like we have so much booty.
Yeah, and you need that danger to make those choices meaningful and to constantly have that tension. But what I loved about that like megalodon encounter that we had on stream is it just like kind of teased us where like it got really close to the boat, it was swimming around and we were like, oh god, it's going to destroy us, and then it just kind of went away. And I love that that it wasn't, the threat just revealed itself in a really cool way. But yeah, I hope. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say something that I liked in the beginning and that they've only added more and more of is kind of emergent mystery stuff. I was actually a little disappointed on our stream that when we found that shrine, we couldn't do anything because we didn't have the mission.
Yeah.
That felt like a bit of a betrayal is a really strong word, but like a bummer, Right. But like stuff like that ship up in the clouds, like which I assume if you follow it leads you to like a ghost ship or something, like just weird mystery stuff like that.
But I know what you mean, because when you want it to where when you do stumble on that stuff, you can kind of keep going down the rabbit hole as long as you want. And it was kind of a bummer to be like, oh, we just don't have the right thing for this and we don't know that immediately.
Which maybe wasn't the case. I don't know. Maybe we just didn't figure it out.
Could
I
be.
don't know.
Could be. But yeah, I had a really good time. I think it's a super cool game, and if it is on Game Pass, so if you haven't played it in a while, give it a shot, especially with friends. But I do love that, because Sea of Thieves from us, myself and other allies, admittedly, definitely was criticized at launch for a lack of stuff. But I feel like time and time again, even Fallout 76 and hearing that the recent update is pretty good, they don't give up on these games, and they do improve them, and they do make them worth revisiting. I think that is cool. Ideally, they would be great out of the gate, but at the very least, they do improve over time. And I hope I can play more of it, for sure.
Me too.
Yeah. Hey, stream idea.
We should stream it.
Yeah.
It's a blast to stream.
It is a blast to stream, and I think the audience is into it too. How do you guys feel about heavy stuff?
Sure.
We've had a lot of heavy stuff this week. But,
we are in an environment of heavy.
We are in it.
Because it's going to be a heavy HOTTAKE today. Obviously, there is a lot going on in the real world that is very, very serious, and I don't want to treat lightly by any means, but to kind of tie this back into video games. I was reading an article today talking about Call of Duty Warzone and how when you log in, it gives you a message that says, Black Lives Matter, and that, that, hey, Infinity Ward, we stand against racism, which is a great message. And then they also came out and said, like, hey, we're gonna make steps to improve our community. We're going to add additional resources to ID and monitor racist content. We're going to add additional reporting systems to increase the number of bans by hour, add filters and greater restrictions on name changes, evaluate in-game improvements to make it easier to report offenses, and increase permanent bans to root out repeat offenders. So they're taking all of these steps to actively reduce, toxic and just absolutely vile racist stuff in their games, which I think is great. And kind of the nature of this HOTTAKE is, how do you feel about these steps in general? Do you think this is enough? Do you think there are areas that need to improve? How do you think games as a whole should handle this? Does it change on a game-by-game basis? Because, misogynistic, generally toxic, and just generally racist language is an ongoing, perpetual problem in multiplayer games. And I just think it's interesting now in light of everything that's going on that Infinity Ward is coming out and saying, like, here are active measures that we're going to take.
Yeah, it's like we touched briefly on this in the podcast about mostly the name change thing or the name monitoring thing, but it's like any step is a good step. And it's funny because, in my experience throughout my history with gaming, like, the most egregious stuff is voice chat stuff.
Yeah.
Typically. And so, like, the banning and stuff like that is meant to address that. But it's like, that's a good way to deal with it, is to just weed out the people that are going to be doing that. But I mean, we've got experience with that too, where it's like they'll come back, like they'll start a new account, whatever. Like, you're not going to get rid of them.
Well, they talked about being able to have systems that avoid that, right? Like having more permanent bans. And I'm curious what steps that takes. I'm curious what unintentional consequences that results in, right? Like, like sometimes spam filters just like they catch things that they're not meant to catch, and that kind of happens like on our Patreon page a lot. There's like, my comment got eaten, and it's like, well, they didn't say anything wrong. They weren't spamming. They just wrote a long comment. For some reason, an algorithm grabbed it. So it is something to potentially be careful of. But
one, it's funny because, like, until we get to the point that an algorithm can, like, and you couldn't delay it because it needs to be in real time for the gameplay to work right. But it's like, until there's an AI that can monitor speech in real time and like bleep something out with like a millisecond of lead time or something, like, which is possible theoretically. The way to deal with this toxicity is to get rid of the person.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, any way that they can do that better is good. Because there's just no need for that.
I did not realize that you guys talked about this on the podcast. I looked at the topics Brandon posted in Slack, so I didn't realize this came out. Hopefully, you didn't talk about it too much, and hopefully, we're not being too repetitive. But I think sadly, unfortunately, you can't completely stop people from being absolute shitheads, and so I think you just have to do the absolute best job that you can to, when you do see stuff, weeding it out, like more effectively weeding it out.
I wonder too if there's like some kind of like in between step, that might help in a way that like if rather than because like it's like, say on like Twitch chats or whatever, we have timeouts, right? But I wonder if there's like some way that like you rather than like entirely banning a person, like you just kill their mic. Like, you can play the game, but you can't talk to anyone anymore. Like, you've lost that privilege to talk to people,
right? Because
of the way that you behave. But I don't know if that's something that has to go to like a higher like Sony or Microsoft level to be able to do that.
What's frustrating is, even if I think sometimes not sometimes, a lot of times you have to take a more permanent action because, if you take away their mic and it's like, well, okay, they can make like, custom profile cards. They'll do something awful there. Like, they always find a way to make it bad, or they'll like, message you via the console's system or whatever it is.
I get that on PlayStation a lot, where like I jump into a multiplayer game, I'm trying to learn how it works, and then sort of like what you guys were talking about with Dark Souls, like the community has all these unwritten rules about this game that I'm playing for the first time,
right?
And I just like, you way you play sucks, and like this is BM, and like what I think I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. Like, what am I doing wrong? Like, I'm just trying to win a match. Like, sorry if you perceive this as camping or something. I don't know. Like, it's like it's really hard sometimes, and then you just get these nasty messages. Yeah,
and that can be a problem with fighting games as well, where like somebody will get really salty and they'll send you a message. Thankfully, you can just turn off. You can control who sends you messages, at least on PlayStation, which is nice. Yeah. But a question that I had, is you're seeing a lot of companies and brands and all this stuff come out and say, like, hey, we stand against this. We don't like this. I worry, I guess, that this sort of conversation, once things die down, that will kind of return back to normal. Do you think that's a concern, or do you believe that, when Infinity Ward is getting out there and saying like, hey, we're going to make things better, that's going to be a continued thing, a long-lasting thing?
I mean, I definitely hope that it's an ongoing thing. And like, I think that the backlash, especially after this, for letting it drop or backpedaling, worst case, like, would be very severe. Like, people would notice, people would react. And I mean, in the case of Infinity Ward, where it's like, Call of Duty has maybe a realistic, maybe an unfair perception from a lot of people in gaming, where it's like that online crowd is a little more toxic than other online crowds. I mean, I haven't seen any papers about that, so I don't know if that's accurate or not, but it's like for Infinity Ward to come out and say this, like, if that is true, that a larger part of their base is toxic or racist in this way, like, that's good, because that's letting those people know, like, hey, the company making the thing you like is against that,
Right.
Maybe that'll open some eyes. Even if it is lip service or something, it might open some eyes, one or two pairs, who knows? But I really think in this case, because they've backed it up with some examples, that hopefully they're not just paying lip service, and hopefully they are doing the things that they're saying they're trying to do.
There's some very specific things, and I think it's one of those things that, like, on the one hand, you're like, okay, well, why, weren't some of these steps already happening?
Why did it take so long?
But on the other hand, it's like, well, you can't turn around a response like that if you don't have people on the ground that are already, invested in these kinds of systems and are already working towards this. So it's just really just kind of like, okay, like, let's, take some resources off of something we've been working on and, like, really, like, focus in and dial in on this stuff and see.
Because one imagines they'd been working on this already. Like, there'd be no reason they wouldn't have been. But now, probably they added 20 people to the team or something. Yeah.
I think what is partly frustrating is, there are so many popular multiplayer games. There's so many places to, I think, have people, to say nasty things and all this stuff. And so, like, one game or company takes a step forward and it's like, well, we still have 100 other things where things could be better and improved. And I think questioning our end, where we're talking about games and criticizing games and evaluating things, it's not something that we really think about. When we evaluate games, we're focused on, how good is the story? Do these mechanics make sense? How's the performance? That, what is the online environment like, isn't really something we consider, because we kind of, I think, imagine it to be outside of the game's control. Do you think, I guess, as critics, maybe that's something we should be more mindful of?
It becomes really difficult to determine why something is the way it is, right? Because there are games that they have a positive community, and everything is pretty cool most of the time because the people that play that game are pretty cool most of the time.
Right.
And they're just in it to have fun, and they're not super competitive, and then you get, I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like, didn't, like, Overwatch, like, really, like, turn around for the worse? Like, it was, like, pretty cool for a while, and then, like, people just started berating people for not playing their roles.
I can't say what it is like now, but I have had some incredibly obnoxious people in random matches of Overwatch, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I just feel like I've known multiple people that just kind of, like, sort of to get run out of that game.
Yeah.
Because they just didn't want to deal with it anymore. They just wanted to play the game, and everyone was just screaming at them for not doing what they wanted them to do.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is, like, that's not even, like, racism. It's just being a complete jerk. And so, like, where does that fit into all of this,
Right. And obviously, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, back to your question, like, to directly address, like, it'd be tough in a review, say, to also incorporate the community, because usually when we're reviewing a game, it hasn't been out long enough to tell.
Right.
Like always, how the community is going to be. And like Bloodworth says, communities mutate over time. Like certain games that start with a beautiful, lovely community just turn toxic over time as people get super skilled at it and people don't adhere to these unwritten rules that they don't know about, and they get run out of town, like Bloodworth said. So it's interesting, but it would be an interesting like side paragraph or like follow up to just be like, hey, like 1 year later, these are the games with toxic communities. These are the games with nice communities. Like just an advisory or something.
Right. And it can be incredibly subjective to a degree, because you always run into stories where it's like, oh, I had a really bad experience with Overwatch or whatever. And I'm just using this as a hypothetical scenario, and someone will say like, oh, I never have a bad experience, or, my experience is completely different than yours. So it is a very subjective thing. And you do mention, Ian, and you're right, that oftentimes when we're reviewing games, it's right at the beginning, and things change and shift so dramatically. Like I didn't read it on the air, but I remember I got an email saying Fallout 76, like, hey, I know you didn't really like this game, but the community is amazing now. And you think about it, and you're like, that's really interesting. Like, the people that stuck with it are being very positive and supportive, and that's fascinating, and maybe something you wouldn't get an idea of at launch. So to me, that kind of begs the question, for online-focused games, is there a huge value in critiquing it right away, or is it better to wait to see how things develop over time? Specifically for like an MMO or a primarily online shooter or something.
Well, and we're getting into the realm where, I mean, No Man's Sky, Sea of Thieves, Fallout 76, maybe, who knows? Right. Like, we're getting into the realm where the game 1 or 2 or 3 years after the review, when the game initially released, is almost a completely different game. Right. Like, and the online community is a huge part of that, but also just ongoing work to streamline based on feedback. Like, it's almost to the point where like a site, and I'm not saying we need to do this, but like a site could do another review of No Man's Sky now, and compared to their initial review, it would be very, very different, Right. And No Man's Sky has light online, but like something like Sea of Thieves or Fallout 76 or something that's way more dependent on the online, I think that it would not be outside of the realm of reasonable critique to include that kind of stuff in like a sort of follow-up review like that.
Yeah, wasn't it GameSpot that just reviewed Rainbow Six Siege?
Oh, funny.
Well, I know. Yeah, I was going to say that was going to be my comment.
One.
Is places are doing that. Like IGN just did a 2020 review of Overwatch as well.
So yeah, I mean,
I think that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's potential there. I think it's just one of those things where like, the context of a review is, it's always it's that snapshot, it's that moment. Like you can't say necessarily where things are going to go, and so if things aren't altogether there, then that's all you can say. That's all you can talk about.
Which is why I do really appreciate. I mean, say what you will about review practices on Steam and that kind of stuff, but like, I really, really appreciate Steam's. It's a simple thing, but how they have overall and recent reviews. Because like overall reviews could be overwhelmingly positive, and recent reviews could be mostly negative or something. And you're like, okay, what's the story? Yeah. Like what just happened? Or vice versa, I see more often where it's like overall mixed, most recent, mostly positive. And that to me is like, okay, they're changing things, they're listening, and they're improving the game over time. Whereas it's kind of a bummer for a lot of releases on like critic sites, like our review scores or something for a game that are more static, because it's just like, well, that's the score forever, like right. on Metacritic or whatever. I know sometimes they update it, but like, like this game's a 6 forever now, even though now it's a 8, because they've improved it so much, you know?
I'm really glad that you brought that up, Ian. I think that's such a good point. And obviously it's not a perfect system. You know, Steam still struggles with things like review bombing and all of that.
Yeah.
But the way that it is laid out, where you can easily see like an overall percentage and then recent review, and even when you go in and you click, it's like, oh, I can easily see the positive and negative styles. Like, you know, blue thumbs up means good, red thumbs up means down. So I feel like you can get so much information from Steam reviews so quickly. And it's nice because different people format their reviews in different ways, where some just have simple pros and cons lists, and sometimes that's all you need. And it really is at its best, I think, a great feature of Steam that can really influence and help, you know, your purchasing decision. And it feels built in a way to kind of tackle the modern and changing way of games, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. I guess the last thing that I want to say, just because I'm curious, is has a negative online community ever impacted you in a way where you've stopped playing a game or moved away from it for a while?
Oh, all the time. All the
you
time.
Feel like pretty much most things?
I mean, almost. I mean, I'm not a huge online person. Like I get tired of doing the same stuff over and over in that sense. For me personally, like Overwatch, I played like for a while and then I was done.
Yeah.
You know,
You had your fill.
it's just not ever been something I have pursued. But that happens way faster if some little kid calls me like a nasty word, like immediately. And I'm just like, all right, like I'll drop it because I'm not that invested anyway. You know, I mean, I vastly prefer when there's no voice chat at all, because I just like that better. Like I find it more interesting game design wise, where it's like, yeah, you can communicate by making these 6 gestures. And like, to me, that's more fun. It's more interesting. It gets more nuanced, and like it has emergent gameplay that can feel like it's part of the story of the world still. You know, like a Dark Souls person comes into my world and I don't feel like it's, you know, some guy from Memphis. Mm-hmm. Like it's like, oh, there's another traveler, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You know? So I like that aspect of it, but I also like not being sworn at by a 10-year-old.
How about you, Blood?
Yeah, I mean, I think similar to Ian, that like I don't play online all that much these days. But on the opposite side of it, I don't know that that's been enough to like drive me away. I haven't had things that bad, you know, and I think even, you know, when I have had those annoying moments, it's just like, all right, well, just mute everybody, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, but definitely the screaming, you know, 10-year-old or whatever, or if it's a voice filter, I don't know. But yeah, that's that. And the other thing that's like not even, the other thing that gets to me is just when people just seem to have their mic on that don't seem to realize they have their mic on.
Yeah.
The number of times like you're hearing music go into somebody's microphone. Yeah. Or they're like having a conversation with somebody.
Starts.
Yeah.
And then they're like eating chips and you're just like, dude, turn your mic off.
Yeah. I mean, I would much rather have that because it's kind of funny. It's annoying, funny. But it's kind of funny versus, you know, absolute vitriol.
Well, you know, kids screaming in the background or music, or like you hear their game come in and out in phase a little bit. And it's like, oh.
To be fair, though, I do have to shout out to one of my first ever online experiences. And I think I maybe have mentioned this before, but I was a beta tester for Final Fantasy XI on the PS2, so they sent me the Ethernet box, and I got to keep it. But this story is from SOCOM. I was playing SOCOM online, and there was a kid who, this is guessing based on the voice, my guess would be 12 years old, and my guess would be from Kentucky. Because I've got relatives who live in Kentucky, and this person's dialect sounded almost exactly the same. This kid was amazing, like a military genius. He was like planning out our entire strike, our entire team, everything. He was just like, go here, do this. you got to go and flank over there and stuff. I'm like, how old are you? Like, I didn't ask that because it's rude, but I was like, this is great. Like this little kid, and he was like a good leader, like a confident, collected leader. So yeah, the inverse is true, you know, and like, what you might expect from a little kid or whatever, like you might, you know, your first judgment might be wrong. You know?
It is nice when you run into those moments where you're surprised, you know, and that cynicism melts away a little bit. Are we ready for some emails?
Yeah.
Woo!
Are you ready for some emails?
Are you ready for some emails? Our first email comes in from Walter. He says that the subject is non-optimal gaming. Hey, Ben and crew. Apologies if you need to cut any of this. I was recently watching Huber and Kyle play through Evil Within 2, and upon unlocking a 30% crit bonus for their handgun, Huber tells a story about how Brad used to make fun of him back in the WoW days for speccing a warrior for crit. I imagine what Huber is describing here is the choice to build a Fury Warrior in early vanilla WoW, one of the most frowned upon but insanely fun things you could do. I remember I literally kept it secret from my guild that I specced Fury. Respecs were expensive and I was like 13, and successfully off-take a bunch of mobs before unveiling my gear / spec on a boss, in which I ended up very high on the DPS list. This was a unique pleasure insofar as I found gratification not only in success, but in succeeding in a way that was wrong or even perverse. My question is, are there any other gaming experiences you've had in which you've played sub-optimally in one way or another and derived a unique pleasure from that? In what games have you worn bad gear, etc., because you just couldn't stand to let it go?
I mean, the way I play Souls, a lot of people would argue is suboptimal. I have yet to use a shield in Dark Souls 2. I've been dual wielding the entire game and I've never blocked. So I mean, some people frown on that. And like there have been lots of times where I died where I would have been fine if I'd just been able to block.
Yeah.
You know, but it's fun for me. Like
you
I
like
prefer
this?
Yeah, I love this. The other one that springs into mind, which maybe is optimal, not suboptimal, is you can just cheese the hell out of calculators in Final Fantasy Tactics.
Oh yeah.
You can grind those guys up and then you're unstoppable. But it's like stupid. But I just love it. You go down the list of all the little math equations they can do, and you're just like, I win. Okay, cool.
Sometimes it's fun just being stupidly broken. Like, not overpowered, just like, I have destroyed the game. Yeah, absolutely.
It's like you've transcended all challenge.
Yeah.
It's just like a joke. I love that. Like, it's fun. And to me, it's like, hey, you programmed it. Yeah. Like, you put it in the game. Like, I'm going to do it. I don't know. Yeah.
It's weird because I feel pulled in different directions. I am unfortunately one of those players, I think, where if I'm not doing something, like I really enjoy winning a lot. I think to a fault. That if I'm not doing something optimally, I get really frustrated, and it's definitely a tendency that I have tried to combat and tried to be better about. But I do still very much enjoy winning. However, because I like competitive games, I do get really sick of seeing that. And I do think, just the ascendance of information and tier lists and all that stuff and just everything being online. Like, once people have found the thing that works, it just gets really boring when you run into it online over and over and over again. And that can definitely harm my interest in a game. I remember in Hearthstone, that was something that over time really burned me out. Is it's like I'm just seeing the same decks over and over again. And in a way, it's like extremely. No, I mean it's not in a way. It is extremely hypocritical because like I would be using meta decks as well, so I'd be part of the problem, absolutely. But it did adversely affect my enjoyment for sure.
It's funny because my friend Jason and I just did an episode of Easy Update about chess. And he's gone on a chess. He says like every 3 or 4 years he just gets obsessed with chess again. And so he keeps telling me about this thing called I think it's the Jerome opening or Jeremy opening or something like that. That apparently is like this new hotness now. And it's from like 1890. Someone wrote it down in a correspondence, like mail correspondence chess game. and they were the only person who ever did it or something. And now it's like all the rage on online chess. Like everyone's doing this like stupid old school opening. Stuff like that is just so funny to me. Even in a game like chess, there's like obviously a bunch of different metas.
Yeah.
But yeah, the online meta thing is so funny because it's like it can break. Well, Hearthstone seemed to be especially fall victim to this more than Magic, because Magic is so huge that you can usually counter a meta you can like punish a meta pretty hard with a certain deck, I feel like. But like, yeah, some games, if you don't know the meta, you're just done. You're out. And then, like you said, it's like, well, what's the fun if we're all just going to do the same thing?
Yeah, I don't even mind when something is meta, I guess. It's just like the frequency with which you encounter it, where it's like, okay, I'm fighting 3 things in a row, it's the same thing. Like even a fighting game where it's like, I just want, this cast is huge. I don't want to keep fighting the same, like 2 characters over and over again. But right. Definitely some self-reflection in place, because it's like, well, I'm just perpetuating this problem because a lot of times I feel like I'm picking the most optimal stuff. But for sure. Blood, how about you?
I guess the main thing that comes to mind is when I was playing Sekiro, and I was like uploading all these clips to Twitter when I would, do things or accomplish things, and then like people would be like, "That's not the right way to beat him. You're supposed to do this and do that," and I'm like, "It's dead. I'm moving on." I'm like, it's like, I don't care if it was the right way. I found an opening and I took it.
Right.
So, I'll and I learned whatever lesson I was supposed to learn from that eventually, because you have to, because something else doesn't have the same kind of opening.
I think that was one of the reasons where I didn't like Sekiro as much, is because it did feel like there was a right way a lot of the time. That you're supposed to do something, which is fine, but I like being weird and just going and then rolling out of the way.
I do think there is a tendency, and I think everyone falls victim to it and is guilty of it, but especially with games, it's like, I understand, somebody may not be playing optimally, but like, if you go too hard at them and give them too much, or like criticize their playstyle too hard, those make them not want to play the game. Like they'll get there. Like give them room to get better, Yeah. And that's something I have to remember with myself as well. So our next email comes in from Rodrigo. I've been in panel. Hope you're well. The question I have for you is about franchises you feel really passionate about, franchises you've loved and consider yourself a fan of, but at one point took a turn where you just couldn't follow. Maybe you went from devoted love to sour frustration, from passion to cold apathy, or maybe that fire for the series still burns, but you're just disappointed by some recent choices. I don't mean to talk about dead franchises or ones that have been obviously mismanaged by their owners, say Metal Gear, for example. What I mean is more focused on franchises that are still popular or successful, and for personal reasons, you're just not vibing with the way they've evolved. In my case, Soul Calibur comes to mind. I remember playing the arcade with my sister, then Soul Calibur 2, and then 3, which for me is the pinnacle of the series. After that, I'm not really fond of the anime turn the art direction took, while the older series seemed more grounded, and I honestly hate the create a character, which just ends up turning the game into a clown show and devalues the whole cast. Oh, I love that. 3 had the feature, but was still rudimentary. In the end, the franchise is still popular, and to some people, it's still doing a lot right. It's just not for me anymore, and I'm happy to keep playing 2 and 3 after feeling a bit down on 4 and completely despising 5. I just dropped at 6. Are there any such franchises to you?
It's funny, I love Soul Calibur 6, but you're totally right. It's a clown show. It's a nightmare out there.
Yeah.
I mean, Silent Hill is the one that comes to mind almost immediately. And Dragon's Dogma. The series took a real downturn when they didn't make a Dragon's Dogma 2 yet. Real misstep. Real misstep. But yeah, and Resident Evil 6 obviously is whatever, but like Silent Hill is the one for me personally where I was just like, But I don't know if that actually fits the criteria of the question, because like Silent Hill is sort of, I mean, who knows? Rumors are that it's coming back, but like they kind of shot it in the head and left it in a field.
Dude, they shot it in the head and then they decapitated the head, and then they buried it, and then they dug it up, and then they shot it again, and then they buried it again, and then they dug it up, and then they shot it again. It is a desecration.
And they moved it from the sacred shores of Japan to the wretched lands of America. But yeah, Shattered Memories is good though.
Yeah, I like Shattered Memories.
Shat
a lot,
Mems,
actually.
Yeah, Shat Mems is tied for third, probably.
Something weird about saying Shat Mems. Love them Shat Mems.
Love me some Shat Mems.
Yeah, it sounds like you're talking about Shatner.
Oh, no, that's not what I was thinking.
Yeah.
There's a mashup.
Go ahead, Blood.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like this a lot with Final Fantasy now. To where it's like, like I enjoyed 15 in a lot of ways, but there's just something about it that, like, it doesn't really capture the same spirit to me. It doesn't really feel hit the same buttons, the same excitement as some of the older games. When and I think it goes into that, like, quote unquote fantasy based on reality or whatever, because like Final Fantasy, it's always been like this mix of like medieval and sci-fi stuff. But there's something about it when you once you start like getting cars and fashion labels and gas stations, and like I'm not sure that like I know what this necessarily is anymore. So I think there's just something that's kind of started with like the transition to kind of the Nomura era of character design that's like doesn't really vibe with me the same way.
Sure. Yeah, I totally understand that. For me, it's Assassin's Creed, where I've had such a weird journey with Assassin's Creed, where I remember thinking Assassin's Creed 1, for whatever reason, just looked really lame. There was something about it that felt kind of generic to me, and I don't even know why. I don't think those feelings were justified in any way, because I played Assassin's Creed 1 way after the fact, like a few years later, and I ended up really liking it. And then I played 2 and Brotherhood and loved them. Like, really adored those games and got super into the series. And I remember playing 3 and just feeling like my heart was being stomped on. Like, I know some people like that game, and some people say give it another chance, but I just really, really, really had a bad time with Assassin's Creed 3. And I don't think I've ever been able to fully come back to the series since. I enjoy Odyssey, I do, and I think there are a lot of great things to say about it. And every time I dip back into it, I have a good time, but I've just never reached that infatuation at the same level as I did with kind of the Assassin's Creed 2 era, for sure.
Yeah, it's a weird thing for me, because I'm definitely there with Assassin's Creed as well, because, I, at various times, made sure to like catch up on the games and, would really be into where it was at. But I think there's like a certain point for me where like Assassin's Creed games become too much.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think 3 was guilty of that as well. Like 3 was just like, okay, this game is just takes forever. Like I'm just running around through the woods forever. And even getting to like the meat of the game took forever. And I think that's the thing that like really kind of holds me back from getting into Origins and Odyssey. It's like, I'm going to be playing, like, I played a good amount of them at preview events and I enjoyed what I played. But like, I don't know that I want to do this for 60, 80 hours.
Right. And there are so many of them, right? So you kind of go through that with one of them, and then it's like a year or two later, you kind of have that same thing to go through again.
That happens to me a lot with like within a game, sort of taking this question and boiling it down to within one game. Like that happened to me with Black Flag. That happened to me with Neo 1 and 2, even though I really, really adore Neo 2 and I want to finish it, but it's just like I got sidetracked by Final Fantasy VII Remake and then I just haven't gone back. Or it's just, the game just went on and on.
Yeah, and I do think, especially with us where we have to kind of bounce around to different things, I think and this could just be a personal thing, but with Assassin's Creed Odyssey, sometimes they feel so massive and there's so many things you have to do that when you take a step back, that mountain just feels even higher. And it's like, I don't know if I could do that right now. That sort of sensation.
I've had a weird change within my heart about Animal Crossing. And I think this is the first time I've even like voiced this, but like, you know, that pretend like quality of life video that went out, that guy made with those people. And like, I don't know if that's responsible, but like, man, like everything takes so long to do in Animal Crossing that I can barely even bring myself to play it anymore, even though I like my island and I want to check up and I want to like catch the new fish and stuff. It's just like the prospect of listening to Isabel tell me nothing, there's no news for like 40 seconds. It just makes me want to not play it.
Sure. Yeah,
but I want
super get that.
It's hard. It feels bad. And then all my animals guilt me for not being there for 2 days. I'm just like, oh my God.
Yeah,
like
I haven't been away long enough for that to happen yet. That's funny.
They're all like, where have you been? Have you been avoiding me? Did I hurt your feelings? I'm just like, oh Lord, like I don't want to. And I knew going into this that this would happen. Like I like, cause I love that game. It's a beautiful game. And I've got more than 200 some hours in it, but it's just like, I knew that eventually there would come a time where I would stop playing it as much, and then it would feel bad and weird to go back in, and it would get sad.
Yeah.
And I was there was a little part of my soul like afraid of that the entire time I was playing that game. Like someday this game will make me sad. Yeah.
Well, one thing
that's a metaphor for life. Yeah.
One thing that's funny with me, like in terms of a little bit of a Animal Crossing turning point this month, is that you know, the last couple of months, like I was like checking out the guides when the months would turn over and like, okay, you know, make sure I get like any bugs and fish that are about to leave, and then like, okay, what's the new stuff? And like I just like jumped right on that new stuff. And this month I'm like, I'm not going to look it up until like the end of the month, and I'll if there's something I'm missing, then I'll look for it then. But it's been way more fun to have that surprise.
Sure.
That some fish I've never seen before in all this amount of time that I've played suddenly pops up, rather than, oh, check, got him.
Yeah, I think that's the way to do it. Also, like I haven't bought turnips in a month. Like, don't need money anymore.
I was obviously pretty consumed by Xenoblade, and for the first time since it's came out, I have bought turnips, and now I have like rotten turnips that I just need to deal with, and that's a sad feeling. Yeah, I haven't been able to
leave one out though. You'll get ants. You can catch an ant.
Oh, all right. You'll get ants
and flies too. Flies are a lot lower spawn rate, but yeah, that's how you get them too.
I've caught a flea.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't know that those shows up on turnips too. I thought you had to leave like a can out or something. But
I tried the cans and they never worked. But maybe
cans and tires didn't work for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Our last email comes in from Nick. Hey, Allies, I'll keep it short and sweet. What is one mechanic / gameplay feature from a game that you love and think would improve another game you love? For me, it's the glider from Breath of the Wild being in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Climbing to some of those super high mountains and gliding down to a town of 300, 400 meters away would be so amazing in that world.
I mean, Breath of the Wild's got like 6 of these that you could put into a bunch of like climbing stuff, the paraglider or whatever. Glider. The first thing that came to mind is the side step that you get with the Blades of Mercy in Bloodborne. That's such a good dodge, and I want that dodge in like way more games. Just like quick step, so good. And the quick step counterattack, oh, so good.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about counters and you think about like the Mikiri counter, like
Mikiri counter, dude.
Somebody's gonna steal that, right? Like, how do you not steal that?
So good.
But yeah, I mean, I guess the first thing that popped in my head was again, just that positional audio and Wildfire.
Sure.
You know, like, just like I really don't feel like I get that sense of space very often in a 2D game, and it's pretty cool.
boy, the bone I have to pick, and the longer it goes on, the more it drives me insane, is we need to unify some, like, fighting game online stuff where, like, if I were to take, like, 5 games, there are individual features that make things convenient, but they all have, like, different things that I want. And I just want to put them all in one game, and I want them to, like, pay attention to what other developers are doing. And it's just, like, you need to have this in your training mode. You need to have, like, this sort of lobby. Like, all of these things that, like, seem so simple individually, and across the genre, it's, like, so scattered, where it's, like, I'm playing this game that has this feature that no one else has, but it doesn't have these other things. And it just gets really, really frustrating. And I hope better times are ahead in the next generation, for sure. But that is going to do it for Frame Trap. Really enjoyed this one. Wonderful conversations. Ian, Hank, Daniel Bloodworth, thank you so much for joining me. If you would like to write in to Frame Trap, really good stuff. You guys have been sending in great emails. Keep that going. Keep it going strong. AskEasyAllies@gmail.com. One more time, that is AskEasyAllies@gmail.com. And if you want to find out more about us, go to patreon.com/easyallies, where you can support us and keep stuff like this going. We definitely rely on your support. And the last thing I want to say is, once again, huge shout out to the community to come together in the way that they did on Tuesday and get out there and support, this. It's just moments like that I think make me really proud of Easy Allies and this community. And it's just like, wow, like, we set a goal for $4,000 and raised $25,000. Like, the community is capable of doing that. And it just makes me super, super happy. So thank you. And that'll do it until next time.